Hello there, lovely people. It's Alex from Nintendo Life here, and today we're going to be taking a look at the finest, the absolute cream that has risen to the surface of the milk that is the Switch games coming out in February. As always, this is not an exhaustive list. This is merely our hand-picked selection of what we believe to be the most exciting games coming in the month of February to the Nintendo Switch. Slightly repeated myself there. But anyway, that's more than enough waffling. Let's dive right into things. Starting things off on the 2nd of February, we have Project Downfall, which the developers are very keen to point out is not a boomer shooter. So, okay, this is a retro-style shooter, which I have a massive soft spot for, as I'm sure a lot of you watching will know, and this is tickling that particular part of my brain again, and it makes me happy. But the gameplay looks very much less Doom-like and more Superhot-like, and I really liked Superhot. Admittedly, it was a long time ago that I played it, but I know I enjoyed it. The style is going for that kind of ultra 80s aesthetic with a little bit of Matrix in there as well, and the Steam reviews are good, so I imagine this is definitely one to keep an eye out for. I know I will. Next up, a slight tonal change. On the 3rd of February, we have Torn Away. This is an adventure game. It's largely narrative focused, and it takes place in a war-stricken Germany and Poland, and you go across the entire length of both. This is not a light-hearted topic. You're going to be doing quests and little sort of almost mini-games and stuff like that as you go through, so you can really tell that this is very much leaning on the narrative side of things, and I'm all for that. I love a good story, and disappointingly more than ever, it feels more and more important to get this kind of story and message across, because bad things be happening. War is so often glorified, particularly in video games, and so it's nice to see, although this is absolutely not the first time it's been done, a different side being put in the spotlight, because the reality of war is not so good. I just think it looks honest, earnest, sort of strangely bittersweet, and just overall a really important game that probably deserves a little bit more attention. Then on the 6th of February, we have Elisa, Developer's Cut, which is a throwback to classic 3D games. I may even go so far as to say PlayStation-style 3D games. And would you look at that, it's a horror game. It's one of the genres that really, really shined on the PlayStation, and sometimes bad controls actually make it better. I'm a sucker for this style of aesthetic and gameplay. Reminds me personally more of things like late 90s PC games, like early 3D PC games, but that's probably just because I didn't have a PlayStation, and the whole sort of notion of the sort of the tight corridors of a house and things like that, and the random puzzles you find around. It's basically an escape room, but older. I don't know, it's a real slap in the nostalgia spot for me personally, and I think that sometimes the lower sort of grade aesthetic can be more horrifying, and I know I'm absolutely not alone in that. Analog horror is like a massive thing now. This may not technically fall into that genre, but either way, it's lo-fi, it's horror, it looks good. Then on the 8th of February, we have Cannibal Abduction, which is a 3D throwback to the early days of 3D gaming. It's a horror as well. I think it's safe to say that this is definitely falling into that analog horror genre, and it's going off a lot of the same ideas as Elisa, but arguably in its own style and in its own way, and therefore I think it looks fun. It's been well received on other platforms. It looks like a small, little sort of bite-sized game, but you wait. If you complete this game on the Switch version, you'll also get another game, The Night of the Scissors. That's 2 games in one, madam. It's following a very similar idea, but there's a lot of scissors involved. Why not? Then on the 14th of February, we have what I believe to be the biggest gamble on this list, RZ the Jewel of Faramore. For anyone unfamiliar, this is leaning very heavily into... There's a lot of throwback games I've just realized this month. This is leaning very heavily into the Philips CDI games, more specifically the Zelda CDI games. The Zelda CDI games are kind of loved for being a bit terrible in a lot of different ways, and this is kind of trying to show how good they could have been, and that immediately raises red flags to me. I mean, don't get me wrong, it looks great, and I am excited to see more from it, but part of the reason that the CDI games are so beloved, kind of, is because they were done in earnest. They weren't trying to be kind of cringy and awful. They were trying to be good, and it's the fact that they didn't achieve that made them so memorable. So actively going down this route is definitely a gamble. But don't get me wrong, I am dead keen to see more of this. But yeah, maybe wait and see what the reviews are like before jumping on this train. Also on the 14th of February, we have Tomb Raider 1 to 3 Remastered. And if you look at the banner, I hate how this is written out. Just something about the Roman numerals, just 1 and 3. But I am definitely going to get this. And do you know why? Because I've never played a Tomb Raider game before. And I mean that literally. I have never played a Tomb Raider game before. As I mentioned earlier in the video, I never had a PlayStation. So I didn't play any of these games. And you know what? I'm glad, because now I've got 3 classic games that I've never played before, hugely lauded, that I can play on my Switch in the comfort of the current graphics, or at the push of a button, the classic graphics. And I might stay there because I'm a bit of a sucker for that, if the rest of the video hadn't made that incredibly apparent. Simple, honest, and reasonably priced at only £25, or I'm going to guess $30. I don't think I can go wrong with this one, and maybe you can't either. Then on the 16th of February, we have Mario vs. Donkey Kong, and I could sit here and tell you all about how I like the look of the game, but we have a preview by the excellent Felix that is already up on our channel, so I highly recommend you go and check that out. Look at the description, that's where you'll find the link. It's better than me bleating on about it because I haven't actually played it. I think he said it's good. Then on the 20th of February, we have, I don't know how to say this, Quomp 2? Quomp 2? The idea of this game is, what if the ball from Pong escaped? Which, on the face of it, sounds like that's a silly idea, and I think that's why I'm entirely invested in it. You control the ball and you go beyond the boundaries of Pong, and it's kind of a... I don't fully know how to describe it. Kind of an adventure game, sort of? I mean... Well, you can see it. This is the joy of a video. I don't have to say as much. I think this is an utterly fascinating idea, and that's all I need. I don't need anything else. I'm sold. It's mental. Give it to me. Then on the 21st of February, we have Slave Zero X, which is a 2D side-scrolling beat-em-up, which is a throwback to the late 90s. There's a theme, but this one isn't 3D, it's 2D. And that was definitely something that was not as pronounced in those later years of the 90s. And that's kind of cool, you know. Sprite work this detailed was, you know, often forgone for 3D models, because hey, 3D was the new big thing. Interestingly, this is kind of following on from a game from the early 90s called Slave Zero that was in 3D. Oh, it's come around full circle. It's not trying to be the same game or anything like that. It merely takes place in the same universe as this previous game, but you can see the inspirations just coming out of the walls. Stylish, spectacular, weird face on the presumed main character. I don't know, I think it looks great. Then on the 22nd of February, we have arguably not a new game. In fact, literally not a new game. It's DLC for Splatoon 3. It's Side Order. Now, this is fun because Side Order can be like a side order of something. So, you know, you have a small order of something alongside your main meal. It's a side order. But also, you know, the last Splatfest of Splatoon 2 where there was, you could be Chaos or Order and Chaos won, and we got the City of Chaos. Oh, this is if it was the other way round. I'm sure they toned down the Chaos and they vamped up the Order, and it would have been the other way round if it had been the other way round, in order to not just be like an entirely chaotic experience or an entirely ordered experience. But it means that they can explore this side with more granularity, more extremes, and that sounds fun. We don't fully know everything it's going to entail, but I'm excited anyway, and so should you be. Then on the 23rd of February, we have Promenade, which is a 2D side-scroller platformer inspired by 3D platformers. It's kind of interesting, actually. You know how 3D platformers did things differently, mainly starting with Super Mario 64, where you don't have just like a goal, but you have an objective, and you go to the same world multiple times, and oh, you get a clue as to what you gotta do, you know, reach the top, race Cooper the Quick. It's that, but 2D. It's probably been done before, but it's the first time I've seen it. And I just think it's a great idea. It's a great way to do a 2D platformer in an entirely different way. I'm all for it. I'm well invested in this. I'd keep an eye out for this one. I think it looks fantastic. And finally, on the 27th of February, we have a throwback to the 90s. It's Wrath, Eon of Ruin, or Wrath if you prefer. Now, whereas Project Downfall is not a boomer shooter, this is. Like, it just is. It's a Doom-like. It's a Doom-like. You could make the argument that because it's actual 3D, it's closer to a Quake-like, but I don't care. You know, Quake is basically just 3D Doom. Get off my back. The sort of dingy aesthetic that this is going for also somewhat, and I mean somewhat, reminds me of the old Turok games, which that's probably just because I've been recently replaying them. But even so, this is clearly leaning into that sort of area, and I've just seen that this is being published by 3D Realms, and that explains everything. And there you have it. That is our selection of the most exciting games, in our opinion, of course, coming to the Switch in the month of February. But did we miss something enormous? Are you furious fit to burst because we didn't include something that you love? Let us know with a comment down below. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, then why don't you realize just how tempting that subscribe button is? And be sure to check out NintendoLife.com for all sorts of lovely Nintendo-related content. Thank you again for watching. Bye-bye. As always, this is not an exhaustive list. It's not going to contain every game because then we'd have to include puzzle, sexy woman. Don't think I can do that one.